We hope that everybody shall work together and be united in undertaking a task which will provide for the services in order that adequate water shall be provided in the light of the climate change.
The Office of the President through the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, is now drafting an executive order that will reconstitute the National Water Resources Board into a body that will be responsible for the policy, direction setting, and the integration of all government efforts pertaining to water.
Mainly, actually, not only Philippines, of course, right? With the cooperation with UBM, actually, so professional organizer and professional for water treatment here, and the Philippines, the market in Southeast Asia, also important, very important for us.
I would like to congratulate UBM Philippines for organizing this event. This is really a good venue for us to introduce our company and new technology that we would like to introduce to the market.
Everyone. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers for the Water Philippines for inviting me to be a speaker.
Yes, we talked to many distributors. We talked to some exhibitors looking for distributors, and maybe we will be interested. We'll discuss with my boss, then hopefully we can get some product lines.
I heard about Water Philippines from the UBM team, and also it was heavily marketed in social media. So that's what made me decide to join Water Philippines from Malaysia.
UBM, through our water series, aim at bringing technology and system solutions currently available in the international market for adoption and implementation in the developing countries.
Water is closely related to other areas such as waste management, health, energy. When we think about improving the existing systems, these aspects need to be taken into account and in such a way that the poor will benefit.
I have other news to give you. Within 3 weeks' time, we will be giving water free to any area where there's no water. As part of our CSR, this is going to be 24-hour service. Any area, any district, just will receive a phone call and our truck will be there.
Water Philippines actually is presenting the best water technologies and solutions for water supply, filtration, sanitation, industrial wastewater, and purification.
Well, we as the Dutch government, we have been working with UBM many times on all shows, and so far they've all been very successful and very much liked by our company.
Of Regional Water Talks, the virtual event organized by Informa Markets under the umbrella of ASEAN Water Series, with the theme Readiness of Water Sector in Economic Recovery. I'm Afiq and I will be your MC for today. Before we start the session, there are a few rules that we must adhere to. If you have any questions, please wait for the Q&A session or do list them down at the Q&A chat box. All microphones and webcam of attendees has been disabled throughout the session. If there's any internet disruption during the session, kindly be patient and try to sign in again. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of today, Ms. Alma L. Abrasaldo. Ms. Alma is the current director of Philippine Waterworks Association, as well as the general manager of Bayawan Water District. Ms. Alma is also the former president of Philippines Association of Water Districts. Without further ado, let's welcome our moderator, Ms. Alma. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I guess I should say good morning, good afternoon, or good day to all of us via this virtual platform. So this is the first conference focusing on developing Asia's water sector's readiness to economic recovery. The regional water talks will take place from August 3 to 6 this year. This will culminate in the Water Philippines comes December 2021. So for today, we'll focus on the Philippine setting. Is our country ready towards economic recovery in this pandemic? The COVID-19 has had a major impact on the world economic and social landscape. Of course, the Philippines as well. We need to ensure optimal health sector capability and continued economic survival despite this adversity that we are facing now. One most important is the water sector's strong commitment to provide a most basic need of man, and that is water. Water that is available for everyone. What are the strategies in the Philippine water sector towards achieving this goal? How are we preparing for these? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this regional water talks. And to start off, our first resource person is no other than Engineer Virgilio Bombeta, the manager of Wells Construction Division of the Local Water Utilities Administration. Engineer Ver has been with LUA since 1979, and he has been the representative to various interagency committees and technical working groups concerning water resources development and, of course, water management. From years 2010 to 2016, he worked as a senior special lecturer in Pamantasan ng Luzon ng Maynila, College of Engineering and Technology. From years 2000 to 2010, he worked in Mapua Institute of Technology as an associate professor under the Department of Civil Engineering and Sanitary Engineering as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Engineer Virgilio Bombeta on his topic, Sustainability of Water Resources in the Philippines. Sir, take it away. Server, you are muted. Okay.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Okay, so good afternoon. So for this afternoon, I would like to, let me start discussing about sustainability by defining it as providing for the current needs without compromising the needs of the coming generation. So with this definition, providing for the current needs requires an assessment on what we have right now. Data from the Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan, or the PWSSMP, prepared for 2018 up to 2040, estimated the total water resources potential at of the country at around 146,000 million cubic meter per year, with surface water contributing about 126,000 million cubic meters per year, and groundwater contributing about 20,000 million cubic meters per year. From the data of the National Water Resources Board, of the 82,000 million cubic meters of water granted, for which water rights had been granted, 76 were accounted for irrigation sector for consumptive uses, 15% went to industrial sector, 8% went to domestic water supply, and the remaining 1% for other uses. In terms of water availability, that is the ratio of total potential water resources with the population, the annual per capita water availability in 2015 is about 1,446 cubic meters per capita per year. And in 2020, it's down to around 340 cubic meters per capita per year. This water availability is the basis of UN in categorizing the types of stresses an area may be experiencing. As defined by the UN, an area under water stress is experiencing an annual per capita water supply availability of less than 1,700. Water scarcity, if it goes below 1,000 cubic meters per capita per year, and absolute scarcity if it drops to less than 500 cubic meters per capita per year. An attempt to map out water availability in the study indicates that Mimaropa is under water stress. Ilocos region, Central Luzon, and Bicol regions are under water scarcity, and the National Capital Region, Calamba, Laguna, Batangas, Rizal, and Quezon, together with the Central Visayas, are experiencing absolute scarcity. The situation is not getting any better. The 2040 water demand projection for domestic water supply is estimated at 21.4 million cubic meters per day. Agricultural as well as industrial sectors are likewise projected to have the same increasing trend in terms of demand. Now, added to this information, so can we move to the next slide? Added to this information are the challenges to sustainable water management. Climate change and hydrological variability of water distribution and occurrence are natural driving forces. Climate change is associated with extreme events, and of these, long drought spells means reduced runoff. And reduced runoff also means reduced recharge on groundwater systems. At the other end of the extreme would be the excessive runoff that oftentimes causes flooding. It may not be practically very beneficial because the increase in the runoff tend to come up during the wet season, wherein we don't really need it, and extra water may not become available during the dry season. Hydrological variability and distribution occurrence of water is by itself a natural challenge. Rapid and increasing urbanization are the effects of economic and population growth. It also means increase in agricultural industrial activities, change in landscape and modernization of infrastructures, and change in lifestyle. The combination of all those factors commonly results in increased water use, competition of the resource, and a resulting pollution. Inefficient water supply practices are commonplace because decisions are oftentimes driven by short-term economic and political considerations. Considerations that lack long-term vision, needed to implement sustainable development practices. Another obstacle is our inability to appreciate the roles and interdependencies of the different components of the hydrological cycle, making it difficult to set up adequate protection and prevention strategies. All components of the hydrological cycle should be taken into account when developing water management plans. Each component has a specific role that must be better understood. For example, would be the role of vegetation in holding the soil in place to allow infiltration to occur that feeds groundwater systems. Groundwater resources could provide a valuable contribution in alleviating the impacts of climate variability and meeting demands during extended dry periods. The surplus of surface water runoff that ordinarily cause floods during wet periods can be used to replenish aquifer systems. Changes to the landscape, such as growth of cities, removal of wetlands, deforestation, construction of roads, and surface mining disrupts environmental water flows, cause ecosystem changes, and complicates water resources planning. The poor quality of water and the inadequacy of supplies can have a negative impact on economic development, public health, and living conditions. Pollution and excessive withdrawal or extraction of surface water or groundwater may have irreversible results. Next slide, please. Aside from obstacles to sustainable water management, water resources face a host of serious threats, all caused primarily by human activity. They include pollution, urban growth, and landscape changes. Each of them has its own specific impact, usually directed on ecosystems and in turn on water resources. Human activities like farming, forest clearing, road building, and mining can lead to too much soil and suspended particles ending up in rivers, resulting to siltation. If inadequately managed, it will damage aquatic ecosystems and ultimately impairs water quality. Pollution definitely harms water resources and aquatic systems. Water pollutants of major concern includes organic matters, disease-causing organisms from wastewater discharges, fertilizers and pesticides running off from agricultural lands, acid rain resulting from air pollution, heavy metals released by mining and industrial activities, and other emerging pollutants like antibiotics and other pharmaceutical products. In terms of water extraction, the impact of extracting too much groundwater is not as obvious as that of extracting waters from lakes and rivers. There is less visual evidence, and the effects of withdrawing too much groundwater takes longer to recognize. Nevertheless, drying up of the resource will be the ultimate outcome. Excessive withdrawal of groundwater along coastal areas will result in saltwater intrusion, while inland over-extraction may result in reduced spring yield, diminished river flow, poorer water quality, and subsidence. The benefits of groundwater withdrawal are often short-lived, while the negative consequences, that is lowering of water levels and depleted resources, can last a long time. Over-abstraction in surface water bodies is sometimes tied directly to upstream diversion and building of reservoir, the effect of which are exacerbated when combined with extended natural dry periods. And climate change increases water resources stresses in areas that are already experiencing shortages. Extreme weather events stemming from global warming are likely to become more frequent and severe. However, based on current knowledge, scientists can only make general predictions about its impact on water resources. Okay, next slide, please. The only way to move forward is to meet the growing demands for water. Meeting a continuous and ever-increasing demand for water requires efforts to compensate for natural variability and to improve the quality and quantity available. So this includes rainwater collection, which has long been practiced, and it can be utilized to replenish groundwater supplies. It is relatively inexpensive and has the advantage of allowing local communities to develop and maintain the required structures themselves. Diverting surface water into the ground can help reduce losses from evaporation, compensate for variation in flow, and improve water quality. This is a practice along Middle East countries, Middle East and Mediterranean countries. Due consideration, however, must be given to downstream users. Dams and reservoirs have been built to store water for irrigation and drinking. However, they can also bring about undesirable social and environmental impacts, the most significant of which would be displacement of inhabitants and loss of biodiversity. Transferring water between river basin can also help alleviate shortages. I believe we are doing it right now with the case of Angat and Umiray. And next slide, please. Okay. Can you go back? Wastewater is now being reused for different purposes. Many commercial establishments are now using recycled water for their wastewater treatment facilities for toilet flushing. Taking advantage of breakthrough technologies, water reuse can supplement drinking water supplies. And desalination, where seawater and other salty water bodies are being turned into fresh water. This used to be a costly endeavor, but lately the price for this has dropped sharply. However, the problem is it relies heavily on energy, mostly coming from fossil fuels, and hence raises waste management and climate change issues. Next slide, please. So, part of the response to meet today's increasing demand on our available water resources includes prevention strategies and new technologies that augment existing natural water resources, demand reduction, and achieving higher efficiencies. Increased attention should be given to precautionary approaches such as innovative uses of natural supplies and new technologies. The traditional response to demand concerns includes storing runoff in reservoir, diverting flows from water abundant to water scarce region, and extracting aquifer resources, methods that provide ample water where and when it would be needed. These methods are likely to remain part of the most water resources development strategies. Non-conventional water resources such as water reuse and desalination are being increasingly used, and new technologies such as artificial recharge is a worthwhile consideration. Rainwater harvesting is yet another method that can be used to increase the availability of natural water sources. Waste reduction and minimizing the quantity of processed water needed are proven methods that are technically feasible and economically advantageous. The demand reduction and efficiency approach should be an integral part of modern water resources management, and its applicability should be promoted while recognizing that it requires a distinct change in the behavioral patterns of institutions, utilities, and individuals. So this is a change that will require education, awareness raising, and political commitment to achieve effective implementation. So next, please. Next slide. Okay. Demand management. So the other side of the equation for the supply and demand would be demand management and conservation methods, which mostly targets on efficiency. Conservation begins by reducing high losses from water supply distribution systems, and demand management have gone largely underessed by most water supply providers and utilities because mostly they focus more on infrastructure development rather than on conservation. Any activity, practice, technological device, law, or policy that can potentially reduce water use may be considered as demand management measure. Conservation measures are most effective when they have broad public support and endorsements. Important voluntary, mostly when it comes to conservation, they're based on voluntary basis. Okay, so gadgets. So conservation measures may include installation of low flow shower heads, shower flow restrictors, toilet tank modifications, faucet aerators, and a host of other things, all of which tend to reduce flow and pressure. System efficiency improvement program is part of the equation, wherein efficiency revolves around metering of water use, rehabilitation of water delivery systems, leak detection and repair, and pressure reduction in system, all of which attempts to account for everything that flows. The individual measures identified can serve as building blocks in the formulation of implementable demand management programs that can be viewed as counterpart of supply-side alternatives. Okay. Recycling and reuse. Practically, water recycling and reuse is a resource management tool that can augment water sources, improve water quality, help maintain viable agricultural economies, and provide storage for drought mitigation purposes, aquifer replenishment, or stream flow maintenance. The recycled water can satisfy most water demands as long as it is adequately processed to ensure that the quality is appropriate for the intended use. Another scheme would be on pricing. Pricing is an effective strategy for demand management as long as the water rate structures contain strong incentives to conserve water. The development and implementation of pricing strategies aimed at achieving economic efficiency and development management could become the most important option for balancing water supply and demand in the future. Water providers can encourage consumers to conserve water by reforming water rates or introducing surcharges to deter high usage of water, or by establishing fines as a deterrent to wasteful water use practices. Economic theory suggests that consumers respond to economic incentives by assuming behaviors that maximize their economic self-interest. And then maybe lastly would be re-engineering and other innovative interventions. In domestic water supply, the main issue is the quality of water that we use for drinking is the same quality of water that we use in flushing our toilets. Hong Kong is one of the few places that extensively use seawater for flushing since the 1950s. Singapore and Tokyo have followed suit. Water consume on the side of industries, water consuming industries should rethink their processes to utilize alternative sources of water, particularly those that are being tapped for domestic purposes, adapting technology, and fully reprocess, and for them to fully reprocess wastewater. Agricultural practices, particularly corporate farms, should consider efficient systems of irrigation like the use of microsprays and drip irrigation, soil moisture sensors, and evapotranspiration-driven irrigation schedules. And then, next slide. So, in the end, it becomes evident that climate change is having a significant impact on weather patterns, precipitation, and hydrological cycle, affecting surface water availability, as well as soil moisture and groundwater recharge. The growing uncertainty of surface water availability and increasing levels of water pollution and water diversion threatens to disrupt social and economic development in many areas, as well as the health of ecosystems. Groundwater resources can, in many instances, supplement surface water, particularly as a source for drinking water. However, in many cases, these aquifers are being tapped at an unsustainable rate or affected by pollution. More attention should be paid to sustainable management of non-renewable groundwater. Many traditional practices are being refined, like, for example, rainwater harvesting, while more recent advances like artificial recharge, desalination, and water reuse are being developed further. More support needs to be given to policy options, such as demand management, which is stress more efficient use of water resources, as well as the technical solutions on the supply side. The projected increased variability in the availability and distribution of freshwater resources demands political commitment to supporting and advancing technology for the collection and analysis of hydrological data. More up-to-date information will enable policymakers to make better informed decisions regarding water resources management. So, at the end of the day, we should not only focus on resource management, but rather we put emphasis on demand management. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful presentation, Engineer Ver. So really, LUA has some of this study, and that this data is very valuable and positive takeaways for planning in the future for economic recovery is very important for us. So let's move on. For those who have questions, kindly type in the chat box so that we could answer you during the Q&A portion. Okay, so our next speaker is the Chief Regulator of the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Regulatory Office. He is the youngest appointed Chief Regulator in the agency's 24-year history. Prior to his appointment, he led the financial regulation area of the regulatory office as Deputy Administrator. From year 2010 to 2017, he served as the Deputy Administrator of the Authority of the Freeport area of Bataan, and from 2006 to 2010, he was the Special Legal Assistant of the Department of Finance. He also worked in the Central Bank Board of Liquidators, UP Institute of Government and Law Reform, and Ocampo and Manalo Law Firm, among the few. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Attorney Patrick Lester T. to talk about water security of Metro Manila. Attorney?
Okay. Thank you, Alma. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners. Thank you. I'd like to thank Asia Water for inviting me in this webinar. Just like to introduce myself. I'm Patrick T. I'm the Chief Regulator of the MWSS Regulatory Office. Next slide, please. Yeah, just a background about the MWSS Regulatory Office. We were created in 1997 when MWSS was privatized. Next slide, please. The mandate of the MWSS Regulatory Office is we are the ones that are monitoring the concession agreement, and we are here to ensure that the concessionaires, Manila Water and Maynilad, perform their task, and they perform their key performance indicators, and we make sure that the tariffs that the two concessionaires charge will be prudent and efficient. And we are the ones also who set this tariff to ensure that it's going to be we should set the tariff rate at the that can be feasible for both concessionaires, and it should be affordable to the public. And we monitor the infrastructure that the two concessionaires build. Next slide, please. All right. Basically, MWSS was privatized. It was split into two concession areas. The West Zone, which is being headed by Maynilad Water. It is the west portion of Metro Manila and Cavite, and the East Zone that is handled by Manila Water. It handles the eastern portion of Metro and the province of Rizal. Next slide, please. Currently, before the MWSS was privatized, only around 5.8 million people were served by the MWSS. After privatization, Manila Water and Maynilad are currently providing water and sewerage services to 17 million consumers. This is roughly the population of the area of plus portions of Cavite and in Rizal. Before privatization, the water supply coverage only was around 48% of Metro Manila, so more than half are actually not served. Now we are already at 94% and growing. For sewer coverage, we started with 9% of 5 million people, but now we are now at 25% of 17 million people. So technically, it's more than doubled already for the total population served. As for sanitation, around 1% were provided sanitation services. Now, all of the consumers of the two concessionaires are provided free sanitation services. This is already part of your monthly water, so they are provided at no charge to you. So actually all of our consumers to avail of this service, calling Manila Maynilad and checking when they should be scheduled for dislodging. So this is the sanitation coverage. We are currently at 2% only because a lot of consumers decline this service or are unfamiliar that they are entitled to this service. So that's why we're encouraging people to avail of this dislodging services. And the most important achievement of the privatization was the significant reduction of the non-revenue water. Previously, non-revenue water in Metro Manila and for MWSS was at 61%. Just imagine, 61% of the water is being lost through pilferage and through systems loss. We're able to, because of the two concessionaires, they were able to move to 30%, and it's still going down further. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, going back to our topic, which is the water security of Metro Manila, I want to present to you the existing MWSS water sources. Right now, more than 90% of the existing water supply of Metro Manila is sourced from the Angat Ipo dams. They provide more than 4,000 MLD of water every day to the consumers of Metro Manila. And this water is delivered through several aqueducts, as you can see from the right portion of the slide. you can see that we have around 7 aqueducts, and these are all bringing the water from the Angat Ipo to Metro Manila. And this in turn is going to be split up 60-40 to Maynilad and Manila Water, which will then go directly to their water treatment plant. The reason it's 60-40 is because there are more people in the west zone or in the Maynilad side than in Manila Water side. That's why the ratio is 60-40. And after that, the Angat Dam was actually built in the 60s. And the duty of MWSS corporate office is actually to find alternative water sources. And in the meantime, Manila Water and Maynilad is tapping Laguna Lake. It's actually a band-aid solution, but right now we are also sourcing around 300 MLD of water for Maynilad in the Putatan treatment plant, and around 100 MLD from the Cardona treatment plant. These are all sourcing water from Laguna Lake. So those are the water sources right now that's providing water to Metro Manila. Next slide, please. Okay, I'd just like to show that these are the treatment plants of Maynilad. La Mesa treatment plant and La Mesa, there's 2 La Mesa treatment plant and Putatan treatment plant in Muntinlupa. These are the ones that are providing the water, treating the water for people who are living in the west zone. Next slide, please. These are now the water plants. These are the pictures of the ones that were built by and being maintained by Manila Water. These are the Isla Mesa treatment plant, Balara treatment plant, and the Cardona treatment plants. These are all servicing the East Zone or the Manila Water consumers. Next slide, please. Now, what happened in 2019? I think if people who lived in the East Zone of Metro Manila would probably remember that there was a severe water shortage in 2019. The reason behind that was the increase in water demand due to the growing population of Metro Manila. As I mentioned earlier, the chief source of water for Metro Manila is the Angat Ipo Dam system, and this was built in the 1960s. After that, we are tapping Laguna Lake, but we are only tapping it probably from 400 MLD. So it's really a big issue that we don't have an alternative water source. And that's the reason why there was a huge problem in 2019, because of lack of infrastructure and water source to provide the growing demand that is in Metro Manila because of the population growth. Next slide, please. I'd like to show to you, this is the map of the supply demand projections for water in East Zone or Manila Water. If you notice, in the 2019, the reason why we had a problem was the source and the supply actually was already at the red line. That's the red line. That's the maximum daily demand, and that's the demand, the consumption of the consumers in Manila Water side. So the reason behind the delay, the cause of the water shortage was because the band-aid solution that we had was really Cardona treatment plant got delayed a little. So that's caused the severe water shortage, and that affected everyone in the East Zone. That's why Manila Water was penalized around 1 billion pesos for that water shortage. But as Winston Churchill has said, never let crisis go to waste. Because of that, it fast-tracked the other projects of Manila Water, Maynilad, and MWSS in developing new water sources, because we realized that there is really a big problem and we need solution soon. So that's why, if you notice the graph, these are all the water supply projects that are part of the water security plan of MWSS corporate office. The corporate office is the sister agency of the MWSS regulatory office. it used to be the former MWSS, and after it was privatized, it became the MWSS corporate office, and it handles the sourcing of new water source. So these are their plans for future in order for us to meet the daily demand of the consumption in Metro Manila. If you notice, the demand keeps on growing higher. That's because of the population growth. So we expect the population of the East Zone continuously go up as the population grows. So that's why we need to find alternative water source to meet this demand. And please note, they're just plans right now. And these are the target dates for delivery. But of course, as all plans, there are some hiccups like what happened right now. Because of the COVID, a lot of these projects were moved back a little. So right now, for example, the Calawis project, the 8 hours project, was moved to 2022 instead of 2021, as well as Sumug. So we are now tapping several deep wells to bridge the gap right now for the East Zone water source. Next slide, please. Now, for the West Zone or for Maynilad water, these are the projections of the water demand and water supply. And as similar to the first slide wherein I presented the proposed water projects, these are the water roadmap projects of the MWSS corporate office. And right now, if you notice, the demand kind of went down a little and it's going to go up. But it's because of the projected reduction in the expansion in the West Zone. That's why the demand is dipping a little, but we expect it to go up in the future as well because of this also due to population growth. Again, with the immediate plans for the immediate future, the Maynilad is planning on further reducing their non-revenue water production in order to extract more water to provide their consumers. So that's the one that they will be using to bridge the gap until new water sources will be delivered. Now, what are these new water sources that have been approved or in the pipeline? Next slide, please. These are the MWSS corporate office is now pushing for the new Centennial water source, which is the Kaliwa Dam and Dam projects. These are actually controversial right now because this project has facing some environmental issues, including issues concerning the indigenous people. But this 600 MLD Kaliwa Dam has been approved already by previous administration. This is actually planned by planned during the Aquino administration, and during the Duterte administration, we are finally broke ground in Rizal, and the Manila MWSS corporate office has committed not to any digging in areas that are covered by ancestral domain until they get approval. So, but in the meantime, in order not to get any delays in the project, they have started with other components or other portions of the project, so they don't face any delay, so they can do it in parallel, because we really need this Kaliwa Dam project to arrive. For a background, this was actually planned by the Aquino administration to be online by 2019. This is the reason why we had a water shortage in 2019, is because the Kaliwa Dam was supposed to answer that, and since it was moved to 2023, I did push for the Cardona plant, and that's why Cardona was like the band-aid solution at the time. But the real solution, the long-term solution, is the Kaliwa Dam and Kanan Dam projects, which will provide more than 2,400 MLD of water Manila. But right now, Kaliwa Dam is scheduled for 2025, and of course, if there's any delay, we need to have alternative backup projects, because we cannot afford a situation like what happened in 2019. That's why, next slide, please. That's why, in addition to that, because of what we faced in 2019, we also had all these new projects to ensure that there will be water for Metro Manila. We've already approved the ATMLD Calawis Antipolo source system, and phase 2 is the Wawa Dam. This will be online by 2020. Actually, Calawis, because of COVID, it has been moved to 2022. Wawa Dam is still on track for 2025. East Bay is supposed to be delivered also in 2021, but we expect it in 2022, the first phase. And the phase 2 will be after probably on 2024. And Poblacion Water is going to be online as well in 2023. So this will be band-aid solutions in order to bridge the gap while we are waiting for Kaliwa Dam to be delivered. Calawis and Wawa are being sourced from the Wawa Dam. These are all in Rizal. And this will be a dam project, surface water. East Bay and Poblacion are going to source their water also again from Laguna Lake. So that's the easy water source right now, is tapping the Laguna Lake. The reason we are not really pushing for Laguna Lake for all of our water need is because treating that water source is actually expensive. The water in Laguna Lake is brackish, and these are not really are exclusive for drinking water, unlike Angat water, wherein it's exclusive for drinking water. So because of that, the quality of water in Laguna Lake needs additional treatment, and sometimes it even needs reverse osmosis or RO, and it making this water really expensive to treat, and it will cause significant tariff adjustment if we rely on this kind of water. That's why we want to look for alternative water sources, and that's why we are also looking into other water sources again, because we want to make sure that there will be a repeat of 2019. Now, besides that, what is the MWSS RO pushing? If you notice, if you saw the previous slides about the water demand and water supply graph projection, right now, what is best for us in the short term is to flatten the curve. We're talking about the demand curve. Okay, next slide, please. That is why we are pushing for water conservation. MWSS RO is spearheading a massive information campaign to our consumers in order for us to conserve water instead of relying on finding new alternative water sources, because you cannot build a dam overnight. It takes years. If you can see the Kaliwa Dam, it was planned by the Aquino administration, and it will not even be finished during this administration. The target right now is 2025. So it really takes a while to build these infrastructure projects, and it takes a lot of money to do that. So in the short term, we are tapping with several champions. We are tapping with several celebrities, the LGUs for assistance in conservation. Next slide, please. Now, why is conservation better? Water conservation is significantly better because it's less expensive than developing new water source. It also reduces stress on the environment. If you build a new water source, like for example, we're building Kaliwa Dam, there are environmental issues and there are environmental concerns, which needs to be addressed, of course. But because of that, it has a strain on the environment. Unlike water conservation, wherein you just flatten the demand curve and it will stretch the water for everyone. These water conservation is also easier to implement, and the biggest plus factor for our consumers, it will save consumers money, because the tariff structure of Manila Water and Maynilad are an inverse pyramid. The more you consume, the more expensive your water bill will be. It's not like if you consume 10 cubic meters, you pay 100 pesos. If you consume 20 cubic meters, your bill will be 200 pesos. It's not going to be like that. It's actually the more you consume, the increase in your water rates will be all exponential. So it's actually to encourage water conservation and to subsidize the consumers who are consuming less water. So it actually encourages people to conserve water as it will have a significant effect on their monthly water bill. And what other benefit of water conservation is actually that this will help stretch the water supply through the dry season and through any problems with the water supply issues. As you all know that because of climate change, we cannot really predict when the rains will be coming, and sometimes there's going to be drought or any concerns with that one, any concerns with water supply. So water conservation will help stretch this supply so that we will be able to bridge the gap between the wet season and the dry season. And if there's any water shortages, this will actually help reduce the severity of this problem. So what are the things that an average consumer can do? Next slide, please. Now, these are water conservation tips that we have gathered from several of our champions and other experts. These are the tips that any ordinary consumer can do to help the environment, because water conservation starts with everyone. It can't be just relied on one entity, or you can't rely on the government for this. It has to come from everyone. So everyone has to help out. So what can they do? Like reducing their shower time. They don't need to, they can turn off their shower or faucet while they are soaping or shampooing or brushing their teeth, shaving. They don't need the water to run while they're doing that. They can wet themselves, then they can turn off the water, brushing their teeth, they're doing their shampooing, they're doing their stuff. And once they need to rinse off, that's the time they can turn on the water again. They can also regularly check for their water leaks and immediately call for repair. Actually, that's one of the issues right now. And during the pandemic was that because there was no water bill, no meter reading, people didn't find out that there was a water leak already, so that they didn't know that their meters going crazy, and it resulted in this bill shock. So that's why we encourage people to regularly check their water leaks every month, monitor their bill if there's any significant spike, and to make immediate repairs right away. So that's very important because water leak is a very significant cause of water problems and water supply issues. They can also, as suggested earlier by Virgilio, our first speaker, they can collect and reuse rainwater. That's one thing you can do to help alleviate the water shortage and do something for the environment. Is the rainwater harvesting. That's very important. And there are actually several laws already passed that will give incentives to buildings that have rainwater harvesting system. You can also wash dishes in water basin instead of the regular dishwasher. You can also install aerators on your faucet to reduce the water flow. That's actually very cheap. You can just go to any I won't say the name of the brand of the stores of SM, but any hardware store. You can just buy that aerators to plug it in your faucet. This will reduce your water flow. If you can, use the half flush of dual flush toilet system to reduce the water consumption, because every time you flush your toilet, actually that's using drinking water quality, and you're just using it to flush your water. You can also reduce your water hose for cleaning or watering plants. Best to reuse water from, let's say, for example, you wash your hand without soap, just washing it. We can reuse this for watering your plants or washing for cleaning your car. So maybe you can reuse all this water. As well as I personally am doing is I placed a big water at the sprout of the roof to collect rainwater, and I use this to water my plants. So these small tips are encouraged for everyone, because if each person does that, we can conserve probably 1 cubic meter per person per month. That's going to be significant, because out of 15 million people, think about it, that's 15 million cubic meters per day. if per month, I'm sorry, if we save that. So that's going to be that's going to add up a lot in the future, and this will not only help the environment, this will help everyone's pocketbook, as this will significantly reduce your water bill. And that's it. Thank you very much. Next slide. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Attorney Patrick, for your presentation. Now, apologies as we are waiting for our moderator, Ms. Alma, to join us back in since there's a bit of technical issues.
Okay, thank you so much. And
All right, thank you, Ms. Alma.
to ask our speakers, please type in your question on the Q&A chat box, which you can see at the bottom of your screens. So there we go. We have our resources. We have our two speakers talking about resources on the other side, and the demand on the other side. So there are various solutions. So are we ready for economic recovery? Okay, so here is a question addressed to Engineer Ver from Hoyen Dang, Vietnam. Could you assess the possibility of applying desalination and rainwater harvesting in the Philippines? How do you promote this application via legal policy? Thank you.
Yeah. Desalination is already being applied right now in our country. Now, I don't think that is within the ambit of NWRB, because what the NWRB is regulating our fresh water. Now, if desalination of seawater, so I believe we don't need any kind of regulation except for the wastewater, the wastewater component that have to be there, that has to be disposed of. There are specific places that already, many of the island resorts in our country are already using desalination. I know for a fact that Metro Cebu Water District has already embarked on desalination, and they're planning, and I believe one of the concessionaires of MWSS is already doing a proposal for Metro Cebu Water District for a bigger scale desalination project. So when it comes to laws, I don't think the actual use requires regulation. What requires regulation would be for the byproducts or the waste that goes with the desalination process.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. Here comes another question for MWSS from an anonymous attendee regarding the water tariff of your both concessionaires. Do MWSS approves their tariff or other government agency? Did those two concessionaires have franchise or still the franchise owns by the MWSS?
Okay. We are in the as for that the first question regarding the tariff, yes, the MWSS RO is the one that determines the tariff. Both concessionaires, the process is both concessionaires will be applying for tariff adjustments, and it will be the MWSS RO that will be studying and reviewing it, and it will submit this approval and recommendation to the MWSS Board of Trustees. It is the MWSS Board of Trustees that will be approving or disapproving any tariff adjustments. So that's for the first question. The second question is with regard to whether or not about the franchise. Right now, actually, that question is very apt. I think the House of Representatives just passed on third reading the legislative franchise of both Manila Water and Maynilad yesterday. So it will now be transferred to the Senate for their approval. And once the Senate approves it, it will then be referred to the BICAM. Then it will be presented to the president for his approval. The two have already agreed to be treated as public utilities and thus are required to obtain a legislative franchise. I hope
Wow.
that answers your question.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, question for Engineer Ver from Kawa Wong. Dear Engineer Virgilio, is there any water recycling example in Philippines from secondary treatment effluent?
What I could think of right now, because treatment for wastewater is an expensive endeavor. Right now, what I could think of would be the two main mold chains in our country that are utilizing wastewater from wastewater being recycled to supply for at least flushing of the toilets in the commercial establishments. So those are the two entities that I am familiar with that utilizes wastewater recycling. Okay. Hello.
I think Alma Alma is having some technical difficulties.
Yes, she's back.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that. So for MWSS from Antonio Garcia, what is the government doing to help water provider companies fast-track implementation of critical projects related to water supply and wastewater management?
Yes. Okay, thank you for that question. The government is actually fully cooperating and supportive of the two concessionaires trust to fast-track their critical projects, especially water source. That's the reason why after several years before the previous administration, it takes really a while for any projects to be approved, any new water source. But during this administration, we were able to approve a lot of new water source projects because we realized that we are already at that level wherein that the buffer zone for new water source, new water supply, and the demand is really at the buffer is really thin, so that we need to find alternative water source immediately. As for wastewater management, it's actually also the Duterte's administration's trust, as they even started the battle for Manila Bay. I'm not sure if I think people in the Philippines are familiar with that. And this all started with the trust of the president to clean up Boracay. It started when the president closed down Boracay and to ensure that the water there and the wastewater in Boracay is properly treated because it is indiscriminately being discharged there. After that, they decided to focus on Manila Bay because it also has a lot of severe problems and a lot of severe issues. So because of that, it started the ball rolling, and it's because of that more LGUs are now more cooperative, and people are now more understanding that there is a really need to treat water properly, because if you don't treat this water properly, it will affect everyone because it goes to the environment untreated, and this will have a severe effect on everyone, not just you. So that's the reason why this government is really gung-ho about making sure that wastewater is treated properly. So it started the ball rolling, and it started the trust to push the two concessionaires to fast track their wastewater or their environmental responsibilities faster. All these projects, because of that, before they were not really looking into that to fund wastewater, to fund capex projects for wastewater treatment plants, because there's really no revenue for that. If you look at it, there's really no revenue. It will not cause an increase in their revenues. But because of this administration, we convinced the two concessionaires to fast track these projects or else. So I think that's one of the reasons why. And of course, there's another thing. The Supreme Court recently imposed a penalty because of the problem with wastewater. So it gave us a necessary kick. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got lots of questions coming in. Here's another one for attorney from Hoyne Tran, the question is, rivers in the Philippines are mainly short and steep rivers. Does this cause some difficulty to the water supply for the Philippine people? And can you tell me about the level of access to clean water between rural and urban areas in the Philippines? Thank you so much.
Sorry, whose question? It's for whom?
For attorney.
Sorry. Can you repeat the question? My apologies.
Okay. So rivers in the Philippines are mainly short and steep rivers. Does this cause some difficulty to the water supply for the Philippine people? And can you tell me about the level of access to clean water between the rural and urban areas in the Philippines? Thank you so much from Hoyne Tan Hui.
I think that question is not for me because we're handling Metro Manila, so it's all urban. So there's really no problem with access. And as part of my presentation, actually more than 94% of people in Metro Manila and Rizal and Cavite already have access to safe drinking water.
Okay, yeah. So how about Engineer Ver for the countryside, because they are under the Local Water Utilities Administration? Any thoughts on this?
For the countryside, it's quite mostly water districts are utilizing groundwater, the bulk. I presume more than 85% of the water districts in our country are utilizing groundwater. Now, for those communities, for those water districts that utilize the surface water, mainly coming from rivers, it's good to note that the quality of the water that they're using is relatively good, simply because they have access to upstream portion of the river segment, or maybe along the headwaters itself. So the quality of the water is very relatively very good for drinking purposes. And then also it pertains to the quantity of water that is being extracted on river system is not that much, considering that the population that being served is also small as compared to unlike MWSS, wherein there is high density localities are located. So the quantity of water that's being extracted is not that much that would affect extraction rates.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you. So it's kind of this is a question that can connect to your concern, engineer. So does the government, both national or local, have any programs or initiatives to provide water to those unserved or underserved areas?
Okay. Thank you, GM. Maybe you could help me out on this one. Now, whenever whenever we try to develop water supply system, we start with the population center, and then we expand ultimately remote, expand to trying to provide the reach. However, there would be certain locations wherein there would be certain locations wherein it would be difficult in terms of economics on providing service to very remote areas. So most of the time, water districts, maybe JM, you could attest to it that at most you could only provide for at most maybe around 90% of the general population, particularly if the location, if the locality have mountainous areas or very remote areas. Now, so what happens? What happens to the remaining portion? So the unserved portions are being taken care of by the DILG through several of their programs. One specific program that I could think of is the BUB program of the DILG. We have the Salin Tubig program that caters to the waterless barangays. And then we have rural water works, RWSAs, level 2 systems that operates, being operated by organizations, being operated by community-based organizations, and operated by civil societies. So, and then we even have programs of the DSWD through the Kalahi Seeds. And then we have programs coming from the cooperative development authorities, wherein water systems are being operated by cooperatives. So those are the different entities that help provide water supply for those areas that are not being covered by water districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. So there are many support. So let's go for 100% service then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, engineer. So another question for attorney. Dear Sir Patrick, suppose your Kaliwa and or Kanan dams doesn't push through due to issues of ancestral domain concerns. Do you have other long-term solution on the rising demand in Metro Manila?
Okay. Right now, that's the plan. That's the long-term solution is Kaliwa and Kanan Dam. That's the new Centennial project. That's the project that are being pushed for by the government. We understand that these are all long-term plans. So what are we doing right now in the medium term to stretch the water supply? We are doing demand management right now, and we are trying to further reduce non-revenue water. And third is we are tapping alternative water sources, even if it's not, even if it's just going to be 100 MLD there, 50 MLD here. So these are the projects that we have approved. These are the medium-term water supply projects. And if those projects are if the Kaliwa and Kanan Dam will not push through, then Metro Manila will be facing a severe problem in the future. So that the answer there might be desalination. However, that will entail probably more than doubling the price of water because desalination is very expensive. Right now, I think the projected is the probably per cubic meter is around 90 pesos. So that's the ballpark figure we're looking at on the cost of desalination. Right now, water tariff is at 40 pesos, average of 40 pesos, and that already includes for environmental protection like wastewater. So on top, if we add to that, probably more than 150% increase in water rates. We want to avoid that situation because not everyone can afford to pay for their water bills if we increase it that much. So we are trying to avoid that as much as possible. That's why we're trying to find a win-win solution right now.
Okay, so it's kind of also a connection to the question of Lovisa Balanay. What are the ongoing long-term programs or initiatives to ensure resiliency of water sources against climate change, long droughts, and high siltation?
The solution really for climate change is looking for alternative water source and not to rely on just one. Right now, Metro Manila is relying on just one, Angat Ipo Dam. That's the reservoir that we are relying on. And if we have problems there, we will have problems in Metro Manila. So we don't have an alternative water source. That's why we need to do Kaliwa Dam, which will provide an alternative water source. We're also tapping Laguna Lake, but again, treating Laguna Lake water is actually expensive as well. It's not as expensive as desalination because that's RO all throughout, but it's still brackish water. So that is going to be a problem for us because of water rates. So the real solution is really finding other alternative water sources.
Okay, thank you. Another one, attorney from Sukarit Quintana Coyum. How much you can save water via water conservation in the past period? What is the most incentives for water conservation?
Depends. It actually depends on the consumer how much effort and planning they can do, because there's really no stick right now to force people to conserve water. The only carrot that we can give is it will result in a lower water bill to the consumer, and that's why actually, as I mentioned earlier, the tariff structure of the Manila Water and Maynilad is an inverse pyramid, wherein that the more you consume, the more expensive your water bill will be, and the increase is exponential per 10 cubic meter bracket. So if you are able to reduce it by more than 10 cubic meter, you'll have a significant change in your water bill. So that's more money in your pocket.
So in line with that, there's a question from Vignesh Nathan. For MWSS consumers in light industrial manufacturers, what efficiency saving program, smart metering, for example, could you propose or recommend to these consumers to monitor, control, and conserve water being supplied to their facility?
I think we're talking about smart metering. That's actually being studied right now. The smart meters are really expensive. I think it's more than double the price of a regular meter. But Manila Water and Maynilad are studying it to check about the cost efficiency for this smart metering. So it will actually reduce the need to go there to read the meter. You can just do a drive-by, and you can already collect this. We're also studying other countries' smart meter program. I think Hong Kong and Singapore are doing it right now. We are closely monitoring their rollout, and we are studying if it can be feasible here in Metro Manila. That's it. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So here again, attorney. So from Prayu Kashakar, along with the promotion of water conservation practices, do MWSS plans for sewage treatment and recycling of sewage water, which will contribute to reducing demand of fresh water? So it's sewage recycling, attorney.
Yeah. Again, we are not yet there. We are actually also studying it because we actually are studying what Singapore is doing. They have a program called New Water. They are using they're recycling their sewer water and cleaning it to make it drinking water. So we are still not yet there because that's actually really expensive to treat that water to make it viable for drinking. Maybe we are looking at turning it into gray water. I think that's more feasible in the near future. But to make it drinking water quality, it's going to be really, really expensive. So we are still not yet there, but we are open to it in case Kaliwa and Kanan is not. So we are monitoring technologies abroad for options. So everything is on the table right now, and we're not closing our doors on anything.
Okay, for our last two questions, from Seferino Suli Jr. to attorney, sourcing water from Laguna de Bay is considered by MWSSRO as a band-aid solution. Is Laguna de Bay not being looked at as a long-term viable source? Both Mayniland and Manila Water are making huge investments in their 3 filtration plants already.
Yes, again, as I mentioned earlier, treating the water from Laguna Lake is really expensive compared to treating water from Angat Dam or the projected expense for treating water from Kaliwa Dam. So because the water is brackish, it sometimes needs reverse osmosis, and our experience in the water quality in Laguna Lake, it really shifts dramatically, leading to a lot of water interruption. So we don't want to rely on that as our base load for water supply. We are exploring that as a band-aid temporary solution to bridge the gap, because the cost of, for example, these are ballpark figures, to treat water from Angat Dam, it will probably cost you around 3 pesos. To treat water from Laguna Lake, it will probably cost you 3. So that we're talking about that significant difference in treating the cost of treating water. So we don't want to rely on too expensive of water treatment to provide our water to our consumers. So that's the reason why we are looking at it as the solution, as the long-term solution. We're looking at it for short-term. That's why we approve projects for 200 MLD, 300 MLD. We're not approving for 1,000 MLD right away, because it costs too much, and it will cause the water rates to spike too fast, and we don't want to burden the consumers in Metro Manila for a high monthly bill. So that's the reason why we are trying to minimize our exposure there.
Thank you. And this is a general question addressed to both of you from the ACJ of Malaysia. Is there any master plan to ensure all population in Philippines to be connected to treated water grid in short term or on the long term? Thank you.
I'll answer that first. For Metro Manila, we are already at 94% connected to water service. So we are, as for a master plan, yes, part of my presentation on the upper the graph, that's actually the water security master plan of the MWSS corporate office. That's the long-term plan to ensure that Metro Manila will be adequately supplied with water, and that that's the water security master. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How about you, engineer?
Yeah.
Master plan for the countryside?
Technically, there is a national master plan. We call it the Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan for 2018 up to 2040, wherein specifically projects, programs, activities, and outcomes are clearly spelled out to cover. Maybe, well, it's difficult to say that it would be 100% coverage, but to cover, to provide for water supply and sanitation for the country. So we have a national master plan.
Okay, so thank you so much. So we have still we're still receiving some questions through the chat box, and our speakers will go back to that. We'll answering you shortly. So to wrap up, we thank our 2 resource speakers for today's event, and also to our audience who are very attentive and excited to hear us out. So we hope for better situation in the days ahead as we prepare ourselves in fighting this pandemic. Once again, we invite you to the next day's events on Regional Water Talks, focusing again on another country, that's Thailand. So at this point, we would like to thank our speakers, Water Philippines, Informa Markets, Asia Water, MWSS, and LUA, as well as the Philippine Water Works Association for today's success. Thank you so much, and God bless everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Alma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we end the session today, on behalf of Informa Markets ASEAN Water Series, we'd like to say thank you for joining us in this session. Please join us tomorrow for Day 3 of Regional Water Talks 2021, where we will have 2 more country sessions, Thailand and Malaysia session. Also, don't forget to follow Water Philippines on all our social media platforms or visit us at www.waterphilippinesexpo.com for more information. Once again, thank you for joining and please stay safe.
We hope that everybody shall work together and be united in undertaking a task which will provide for the services in order that adequate water shall be provided in the light of the climate change.
The Office of the President, through the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, is now drafting an executive order that will reconstitute the National Water Resources Board into a body that will be responsible for the policy, direction setting, and the integration of all government efforts pertaining to water.
Mainly, actually, not only Philippines, of course, right? With the cooperation with UBM, actually, so professional organizer and professional for water treatment here, and the Philippines market in Southeast Asia also important, very important for us.
I would like to congratulate UBM Philippines for organizing this event. This is really a good venue for us to introduce our company and new technology that we would like to introduce to the market.
Everyone. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers for the Water Philippines for inviting me to be a speaker.
Yes, we talked to many distributors. We talked to some exhibitors looking for distributors, and maybe we will be interested. We'll discuss with my boss, then hopefully we can get some product lines.
I heard about Water Philippines from the UBM team, and also it was heavily marketed in social media. So that's what made me decide to join Water Philippines from Malaysia.
UBM, through our water series, aim at bringing technology and system solutions currently available in the international market for adoption and implementation in the developing countries.
Water is closely related to other areas such as waste management, health, energy. When we think about improving the existing systems, these aspects need to be taken into account, and in such a way that the poor will benefit.
I have other news to give you. Within 3 weeks' time, we will be giving water free to any area where there's no water. As part of our CSR, this is going to be 24-hour service. Any area, any district we'll receive a phone call and our truck will be there.
Water Philippines actually is presenting the best water technologies and solutions for water supply, filtration, sanitation, industrial wastewater, and purification.
Well, we as the Dutch government, we have been working with UBM many times on all shows, and so far they've all been very successful and very much liked by our company.